Hello. Today we have the Zaffiro Trio with pianist Tina Faigen, clarinetist Beth Malek, and myself, Paula Tuttle, cellist. We also have with us poet Nira Willis and composer Robert Schultz. Welcome everyone, and welcome to our listeners. Today our topic is Music Inspires Poetry. So we'll be playing portions of a program that we recorded at the Frick Fine Arts Auditorium on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh this year on February 3rd. In this concert, there are 3 musical works and the poems that poets of the University of Pittsburgh's Poetry Forum created for this project. The origin of this collaboration was University of Pittsburgh's Year of Creativity initiative. Our department head, Matthew Rosenblum, and English department head, Jeffrey Oakes, were very helpful in creating assistance for this idea and this collaboration. We're thankful to the Lunch with Books series for presenting this to help us recreate this experience virtually. So we're going to start with a video, and there's going to be a poem first. The work is a nocturne by Fredrich Wilhelm Voigt. The reader of the poem is Cindy Chow, and the poem was written by Philippa Zhang.
Nocturne. I remember my closest encounter with darkness. The full moon. The black of the sky, bright compared to the black of the ground. Mud and shadows sinking beneath my feet. Tendrils of dense laurel and the low-hanging branch that pierced me below my right eye. The heavy rain, my heavy breath. Branches cradled the light blue moon. There in the middle of the wood. It could have been any wood. I was taught, reminded how Earth knew space before cities rose. How could this be? The thought lingered as I shivered awkwardly in the bush. That demons might still want to dance with me. But night was perfect, and I was a clumsy lover. Mud and shadows. Some desires make you want to walk on your heels, out of respect, out of fear. A bad injury. To be still in darkness is to learn how to be lost. To move through darkness is to make oneself a curious fool. Nocturne. I wanted fiercely to become part of the sound instead of erupting inside of it. But feet snap branches and the night reminds you how your movements don't belong in it. As the night ends, the scream slips back towards the song.
Okay, so hopefully you felt like the poem set up the music, or that the music reflected the poetry. So our next video is the trio by Robert Schultz. So we have Robert here, Robert Schultz. And so Robert, let's talk a little bit about your composing process. And I think Tina also is going to partake in this discussion because we've got a piano here. Robert, you were commissioned to write a piece for a specific instrumentation, clarinet, piano, and cello. Did you create new material, or did you draw upon old ideas, motives? Just exactly how did you go about creating this wonderful piece?
Well, thanks, Paula. I can give you a little bit of background. First of all, when the Zaffiro Trio first formed, and I think this was in 2015, and they went to work on the repertoire that existed at the time. There are wonderful works by Brahms and Beethoven and any number of great composers. And I wanted to contribute to this. So in the next year, 2016, I wrote a single movement piece for them called Fantasia, which I, and I think the members of the trio and the audiences that they played it for felt was quite a successful piece. It was colorful, and I really enjoyed writing for this particular ensemble. I had not written for piano, cello, and clarinet as a specific group prior to this, and there are challenges writing for this this particular group, but there are great rewards as well. The clarinet, for instance, is an instrument that's capable of great power and can easily dominate an ensemble setting where three instruments like this are playing, and so that needs to be balanced carefully within a texture. And the cello, which has these wonderful expressive qualities that we know and love, doesn't have quite the same kind of power in its voice. The piano does, so and also has these wonderful expressive qualities. So all of these things need to be blended and considered when writing for this particular group. Shortly after the Fantasia, I was asked and commissioned to write a larger work, and the result is the trio for piano, clarinet, and cello that we're going to listen to the second movement of this today. The work is 3 movements and somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 minutes in length. The second movement, I think, runs about 8 or 9 minutes, and so it's the slower movement of the 3, which is common for a 3-movement work. I wanted to mention that I had some specific ideas coming into this, but I had not written for this ensemble before. And with the middle movement, as with most everything that I write, and I think with many composers too, there are you begin with a seed of an idea, just something very simple, something very small, and that everything grows from this. And the seed for this movement was just a very simple rhythmic and harmonic pattern that I wanted to insert at the very beginning of the piece that actually feels rather like a heartbeat. It just kind of pulsates quietly in the background and becomes the environment for the work. And it actually returns at a number of different places throughout the movement, but with various developmental aspects to it. It's changing constantly. It's recognizable because there's this rhythmic element to it that kind of remains intact, but the harmonic material changes. It grows in intensity. In some places, it actually leads to climactic moments, although it begins the piece and ends the piece in a very soft setting. So this it's not unlike a rondo, which is a standard classical theme or classical compositional device for movements. But with the rondo, typically you have a thematic material, a melodic theme that becomes what's recognizable, and that the composer will return to this theme at various points throughout the movement. So I wanted to do a similar thing here, but do it more with the environment and the background material rather than a melodic theme. So there are different melodies that are used by the clarinet and the cello that appear over this and that are intertwined and combine throughout the movement. So I'm going to ask Tina to play a few examples of how this material is used in the movement. I think it can be helpful when you're listening to a new piece of music to have something to kind of hang on to, something to look for, and this will give you a way to recognize how the piano is utilized in this second movement of this piece. And now remember, this occurs at various points, and then there's a departure from it, and then we'll work our way back to it throughout the movement. But this is going to give you an opportunity to hear how the piano creates this environment. So first of all, let's listen to the soft beginning of the piece. All right, very shortly after this begins, the cello and clarinet enter and they play a simple melody. They play it together at a 1 octave interval. So they actually have the sound of a single instrument, I think. But something I wanted to experiment with in the writing of this is to use them occasionally rather than as opposed to having them in conversation or in counter melodies, to actually play the same melody at this 1 octave interval, so it has the sound of a single melody, just with this wonderful color of the clarinet and the cello. So you'll hear this very soon, but let me have Tina play just an example of that as well.
So this is actually based kind of in 2-note increments, very much like the piano is with 2 notes. Let's see.
Yes, you can listen to that. That's the first thing you'll hear from the clarinet and the cello when they enter over this soft, pulsating background. Just a couple more examples. If we go a little farther into the movement, I think this is measure 75 or around there. Mm-hmm. This is a little stronger treatment of this with a little different harmonic material.
So it kind of carries us through different harmonic things too. It opens up into a different section.
Right, right. The next example is, I think this is from measure 87. This is where the motive is starting to build to a climactic moment. So it's actually marked, it's agitated in the score. All right, and now we can hear how it's used in a very strong climactic moment a little bit later on in the movement. I'd like you to hear now how we return to this right at the very end of the movement, with the piano again very softly, with very much reminiscent of the material that opened the movement. Okay, thank you. So you may find it interesting to listen to this, listen for this as the movement is unfolding, and to recognize these areas. The clarinet and the cello, of course, will be combining, and especially in the louder moments. And I'll mention too that there are some sections within the movement where the clarinet and the cello each take turns with this primary motive. Sometimes the piano's not playing at all. The cello plays the motive while the clarinet has melodic material, and vice versa. So I think that's a good setup for this, and that'll give you an idea of something to listen to. So Paula, do you want to go ahead and play the movement now?
Great. Okay, that was very nice, Robert, for you to write that for us. Don't know if you heard that. Okay. So Tina and Robert are broadcasting from their home. They're married. I think you met in Florida when Tina was working on her doctorate at the University of Miami. And Robert was the editor and featured piano writer for Columbia Pictures Publications. So Tina, you perform a lot of Robert's works. And, for our listeners, we're all curious. I mean, at what point did you realize that Robert's music spoke to you? And is there a special connection through the music?
Well, there is. I certainly didn't anticipate my career going in this direction, including Schultz work so much. I've done several recordings and several CDs, but it pretty much started when I needed to use an American work for a competition. And my teacher, the great Ivan Davis, said, "Oh, you should do the Schultz Ballade." And so I played the Schultz Ballade, and that kind of began our collaboration together. I played for him, make sure I was doing what the composer intended. It was a live composer to work with. And shortly after that, he invited me to do our first disc together, Visions of Dunbar, where he actually wrote some pieces dedicated to me. And that's when our real collaboration began. And actually, I've been his primary editor for about 25 years, I think, at this point.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to our third work that we're presenting today. This is the Mendelssohn Concertstück. And first of all, let's have Mary Beth, tune in here, because Mary Beth was the one that brought this piece to our group, and she can share some of the background. That would be great.
Yeah, I'd love to, because it's near and dear to my heart as a clarinet player, because Felix Mendelssohn wrote 2 concert pieces. We're playing the second one. He wrote both of them for Heinrich and Karl Behrmann, a father and son clarinet duo. And they played in Munich, and they also traveled around and did concertized. And a piece was written for actually clarinet and basset horn, which is a member of the clarinet family, but it's pitched lower. It's in F instead of B flat, and it also has additional 4 notes, so it plays lower. Besides being pitched lower, it has additional notes, which Mendelssohn utilized in this piece down to the low C. But they're not a lot of basset horns. A lot of people don't own them. They're very expensive, and there are not many pieces written for them. So both of these concert pieces that Mendelssohn wrote are often played on 2 clarinets or clarinet and bassoon. We're doing it clarinet and cello because it works, because the cello has the low range like the basset horn. It's kind of funny how this commission came about. As you've heard from Robert, he's been commissioned to do works, and normally a composer gets paid by a patron or someone who wants a piece written. So the way this work came about is Mendelssohn was friends with the Behrmanns, and the Behrmanns lived in Munich. Mendelssohn lived in Berlin, and one time when he was traveling to Munich, he tasted some Austro-Bavarian specialties, Dampfenknödel and Rahmstrudel. And so he next time he came to Munich, he told Karl and Heinrich Behrmann, he said, if you make those pastries for me, I will write you a piece. So they showed up at his place at 9 in the morning, and Mendelssohn promptly put a chef's hat on them and aprons, and they went to work in the kitchen, and Mendelssohn went to work at the keyboard. And at the end of the day, they made the pastries, they ate. At the end of the day, they played through the piece. And they loved it so much that he wrote a second one. And that's the one we are performing for you now, the first movement from Mendelssohn Concertstück number 2.
Okay, so now we want to introduce our poet, Neera. Hi, Neera. How are you? Okay, let's make sure you're, great. Neera.
Sorry, some technical difficulties. How are you?
Good, how are you? Thank you so much for joining
great.
us. And thank you for writing a poem for our collaboration.
Of course.
First of all, let's just, get to know you a little bit and about how you came about to write this poem. It was part of a collaboration. You were given a source, you were given a piece of music. In fact, I think you wrote for Robert's piece as well, so you can speak to that. But in general, what's your process for taking something like that? How long does it take to think of something? Do you take notes? Just speak a little bit about how you did this.
Of course. Well, let me introduce myself. My name is Neera Willis. I do identify as a poet. Thank you. I did this as a part of class assignment for my professor, Jeffrey Oakes. He set up the collaboration for our workshop class to go in and sit with the musicians and write for them. So it was somewhat like a commission, but also like it was completely voluntarily, and I just took it as a challenge, really. I have a musical background, I have a dance background, so my process of writing heavily revolves around just art and music. I listen to music all the time. I have headphones in now, but I'm not listening to music. But you can never catch me at a moment where I'm not listening to something, whether it be just in my head, and that just continually inspires me to write and to think and to clearly articulate what I want to say. It's an amazing thing. It's my favorite thing about being a writer, and my process is really to just listen. And that's exactly what I decided to do going into the assignment. I was coming out from another class, I believe it was, and I just sat in the back and I was like, okay, no attention drawn to me. I just want to focus on the assignment and write the best that I can. And I heard, I think it was the cello. That was the first instrument that really just struck me when I was listening to the live performance, and I just was whisked away into my poems. I wrote plenty of poems. Just my process, I like to write a lot of hot things, just things that come off the spot. And I go in later and refine and just touch up things that I think need to be taken out, add things that I've been holding myself back from. And I took it to workshop, actually, the poem that I'm going to read. And it just was amazing for my classmates to help with the process as well. Just hearing feedback from my peers and even from Philippa Zhang, reading her poem, just inspiration from that class and being completely present in the moment is how I write. And that's exactly what I did for all of the poems.
Well, it was really great that you did that. Why don't you go ahead and read this poem, and then we'll play the video.
Okay.
And we'll have some more time for you to talk about the poems that you wrote.
Okay. So, a part of my process also, I like to do a cold read whenever I'm talking about my past works, because I oftentimes get too far into my head. So let's just get started. Nira Willis, to Mendelssohn Concertpiece. Movement 1. Oh, what a joy to be at the cinema. The flashy lights of old Hollywood. The airiness masking desperation. Oh, how wonderful. Long feather boas and those gaudy pearls, fast-paced lifestyle ringing across, whizzing about through Hollywood. Oh, dear Hollywood, how truly sad you are. Why do you do this to me? Makes me crave what hurts me the most. And that's the piece. Even just reading it, I just try to listen. I try to listen to the rhythm and the pacing, and my poems are completely musical. I think of them as songs. Someone actually asked me, oh, do any of your poems, have you set them to music? And I was like, well, not really. But then this entire project was me setting my poems to music, or really just letting the music lead me to poems, which is the greater process of it. Just listening and then refining afterwards. I just really fall into a character, When you're listening to music, it just sets a scene for you, and you're in a different world and you're outside of yourself completely, and you're just like, oh, imagining what it's like to be in Hollywood. I've never been to California. I have no idea. And the song just felt like it placed me in that setting. So I decided to just expand upon both the song and my physical setting and my mental setting, just all of it combined, to just feel the song and express it through words as best I can.
Okay, so let's try the video, and then we'll talk a little more afterwards. Great, thanks, Nira. Okay. So yes, Niara, I really love what you wrote. You know, oh, what a joy to be at the cinema. And that music really reflects it. Flashy lights of old Hollywood. This piece written in 1883 by Mendelssohn. You know, it's that character, the Roaring Twenties and stuff like that. And I think you captured it, and it describes it nicely. It's kind of almost a ragtime feel to this piece. And it was written in 1883, and it wasn't even in America. So
Exactly.
Any other thoughts you have about this composition and, you know, how you got here? And you can even speak to the different compositions that you heard.
Definitely. So, yeah, as a student, I feel that it is my duty to try and learn, especially from other artists. And as an artist, I feel like it's my duty to learn from other artists. And so when I was writing these, because I did this poem, Movement 1, is from a collection of poems that I did that day. And I think this song was maybe let me see. It was not the first song I heard that evening and the first poem that I wrote either. And so I kind of was just going on a complete journey. I was letting all of the songs just speak to me individually, and also from a stance of their own composition and how they are pieced together individually, but also the way that you all decided to perform them. And I started out and I titled the series a series of romance poems because I tried to just visualize and think, what are the emotions that these artists are trying to present, you know? And even if I don't know exactly what the composers were trying to convey, I can step into what I interpret it as. And so I just started out with one. We vibrate like the strings of a cello when a bow glides across them slowly and tenderly. Like, I was just very literal. I was thinking of things that I was seeing and trying to zone into the music. So I just wrote straight off the top of my head. Romance like the ones in 1950s classic movies. Grandly and dramatically, we waltz through life together. Are you worried, little bird? And so that's just like the first. I kind of write poems in like pieces. I write hot. I take different lines from different things, put them in different poems, take themes from other poems, and try to just make a more coercive product. And so I just started out with these emotions, the romance, the anxiety that I felt going into the class even. and even into the poem. So I just let it write itself, and then I continued. 2. A grandfather clock takes a terrible leap, scattering its bits and bones onto the white marble floor. Where did you go, dear bird? I've been waiting for you like the clock waits for attention. Longed for you as the clock awaits repair. This house is a terrible prison with lack of sunlight, much time and space for despair. I hear the clock take its tumble, but I didn't care enough to care. And that was, I think, the second song that you all played for us. And it just sounded very melancholy. So I just, and like the room was like this white room, and it was kind of small because it was a small audience. And like, I just felt the souls of the players and the soul of the music. And it felt really sad. But then the series continues. It just takes me through a roller coaster of emotions. The next one I titled 2 Part B, Tumble, because the music obviously changed fairly quickly. The tempo isn't just consistent throughout the entire piece. And so, Tumble. Ringing like the air at the peak of a mountain once you sigh the last sigh of relief at your destination. We tumble, our fates unknown and eerie, free falling off the side of this mountain. Quicker and quicker, we gain momentum until we die. And then that one just ended on a cliffhanger. And so I was like, ooh, it has to be dramatic. And the structure of the poem also has a great impact on how I'm trying to convey just like the waves of music and the way that it sounds, the way that it moves you as a person, as an audience, and as a responder to the music. The next one was 2 Part C, Questions, because I believe this song was very busy and I was just very intrigued with the music at this point. I was writing like crazy. I remember in my journal, I have this black journal that I would take with me to class ever since my first Intro to Poetry course. That's my poetry journal. And I brought it to class. And so I was just writing. And it's like this tiny journal, so it took me like pages and pages. But because even on Microsoft Word, it's like 5 pages long. But the next poem, 2 Part C, Questions. Drifting from within, souls carry the body but are no longer trapped within. Where do our souls go, little bird? Do they journey up the mountain? Do they rest with the body below? Do they travel across the ocean or merely choose nowhere to go and lose their very existence? Part D, Older. The wrinkles on your face make my lips turn downward as I know I put them there, though you simply say it was time. My lifetime lover, where did my joy go? As I now sit and ponder the million ways our lives could have gone, my sorrow insurmountable, as I know I must let go, for I will love you forever, even when you must go. Regrets float through me of all I should have done, or said, or places we should have traveled before one of us were left alone. We never moved to the country, green fields of grass, a warm breeze lifting up your long golden hair above you. Black flower sundress you always used to wear, but now we're both much older with no greenery to spare. And that's the poem actually right before 3. And excuse me. And that poem just really got me set into a romantic mood, leading to the inspiration of like, I'm not myself, this is a character, and what did this character used to experience? What is their voice? And so I just went on. And the poem afterwards, Breeze, is actually the conclusion to the project. and it was the last part of the song, and I was just writing all that I had left. I remember I was writing to the very last moment, I think, of class. But breeze. A window is partly opened, allowing a summer's breeze to fill every corner of the room. The woman stands in the kitchen, listening to a record of a rather melancholy song. But oh, what memories she has. She is 20 or 30, dancing every night to a different song, accompanied by a rather handsome fella, a warm smile she loved looking up at. They danced for what felt like forever, but they were happy and didn't care about the rising sun in that window. That is, until the sun rose no more. She didn't dance forever, but he did through his soul, and on this afternoon they danced to that old record as though they'd never stopped. And that was the conclusion.
Thank you for sharing all those poems.
Felt as if the entire experience had to come to a close because obviously class was over and you guys weren't going to play any more music. So I had to try and wrap up in a way that seemed cohesive, but also was like a bit not cohesive. You know, it leaves a lot up to the reader and a lot up to the audience to interpret. Just see the images. See whatever you hear it as, you know, it's your creative license as an audience member, and that's what I decided to take here and express.
Will you, Nira, do you think you'll publish these poems as a group of all these romantic images? Is that sort of, you know, you said you're grouping these together in your mind and calling them a romantic group of poems. So I guess it's actually time for Tina and Robert to speak again. We're going to wrap up and thank our audience and everybody who made comments. Everybody, we had several people that commented that they enjoyed the program. Wouldn't we love to come and do the whole program live and have Nira come and read all her poems to all the pieces? Someday we'll all be able to meet in person, but in the meantime, thanks, everybody. Tina, Robert, you have anything to say?
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to be here with everyone. Nira, I really enjoyed your poems today. Thank you for sharing so much about that. It was quite a wonderful experience to play for the workshop that day. It's a memory I will have. It's unusual for us to go in and sit in a classroom with students like that and really do a private, personal performance, and to hear everyone's poetry that was inspired by that day has been very fulfilling. So I want to thank Lunch with Books live stream, this Music Inspires Poetry. This was a really great thing to do today. I was looking forward to it. Of course, we all want to be in person, but this was pretty good. So it was nice to connect with everyone. I appreciate everybody's live comments. Thank you to my colleagues from Zaffiro Trio, Beth Malek, clarinet, Paula Tuttle on cello, Robert Schultz, composer, live, present, and myself, Tina Faigen, on piano. It was really a pleasure. So thank you all very much.
So I don't know if we actually have any questions. We have a lot of people that type. People have said, are there any comments? Thank you, Marianne. That's nice of you. I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon and continue to check in with Lunch with Books. I think that there's something every week. So here we are. We're all from Pittsburgh here. You're all down in West Virginia, but it was nice to take this little virtual trip.